number one water.
8 and 9.
We're recording. Are we recording today?
Always.
We're not getting checks for all this filming.
The Total Power Up
Have we
promo from
taken our
Total
celebrity?
does just that. Energizes your car and your body. Okay, here's how it works. Simply drive into select Total service stations between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Fuel your tank with 3,000 naira or more and win instantly a free chilled bottle of Fearless Energy drink from Right Foods Limited at no extra cost. Fuel your car. Fuel your body because you matter.
Promo valid from February 11, 2019 till while stocks last. Available in select service stations. See process and handbills for more details. Total, committed to better energy.
It's the Breakfast Crew on your radio. The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories.
Right, mics are going up now. Thank you. Good morning, Lagos. Welcome back. This is still Smooth Breakfast here on Smooth 98.1 FM, and it's time for Freshly Pressed 981. We have with us in the studio our guest analyst. Thank you very much for coming. Deveo, good morning.
Good morning, Lagos. Eku, no more inconclusive based on logistics.
All right. Thank you, Deveo. You can catch Deveo at Deveo Okorie on social media platform, on Twitter actually. And then we have Adedunmade in the studio with us.
Good morning, guys.
Good
Good
morning.
morning, Lagos.
Good morning.
You can reach him at Adedunmade, just easy. And also we have Gbolahan in the studio. Good morning, Gbolahan.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Lagos.
And you can reach him at Mr. G Quest. You can reach us on Twitter at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981 for your comments. You can also send us a WhatsApp message on.
Yes, send it to 0809444091. That is our WhatsApp number for messages, 0809444091. Also send it through Twitter. Use the hashtag FreshlyPressed981.
All right, we'll dive straight into our first story this morning, still on electoral matters. And let me warn you, Lagos, throughout this week, we'll be bringing you election news here on Freshly Press 981. Now, electoral offenders, INEC disagree with Buhari. This is from the New Telegraph. Now, yesterday in the news, we had a very robust chat about this, even spilled over to Lagos Talks 981, with the president's comments during an APC caucus saying that, or inferring that security agents should shoot anybody caught carrying ballot boxes. This is in the New Telegraph. Well, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu in this report has come to say that violators of electoral law should be punished according to the provisions of law, amongst other things. Adedunmade.
Oh, well, certainly this statement by the president has received a lot of commentary, especially online and even offline as well, with regard to the particular words that he used. I would like to state that surely the provisions of Section 128 and 129 of the Electoral Act is clear, and if you need to do a speedy read up on it, you can go to the Legal Niger blog. Now, there's one more thing that people have been saying in defense of the president, which is that Section 129 is not adequate enough to handle a scenario where a ballot box snatcher comes with a gun. Now, the truth is this: when you commit a crime, when a person commits a crime, there are different elements to that crime, and each and every one of them has a penalty for it. So, for instance, if I snatch a ballot box by being smart, if I just keep an eye out, I run pretty fast, I grab it, and I'm able to escape with it, then fine, I have snatched a ballot box, and that will literally get the person 24 months in prison, which is 2 years. Now, if I go to a polling center with a gun to snatch a ballot box, now the element of that crime is different from just snatching a ballot box. One, I am in possession of a firearm. Two, I have used that firearm to scare people. That is threat to life and property. Now, all those elements have relevant provisions under the law that pertain to them, that prohibit them, and that punish them. So the president did not necessarily have to come out and say all ballot box snatchers should be dealt with ruthlessly, or even insinuate that they should be killed, which is the position now. what it should have just simply said is that anybody who commits an offense will be treated according to the position of the law. So if you snatch the ballot box simply, yes, you get 24 months. But if you go there with a gun and you get shot, then of course the police will be in the right for protecting the life of the citizens that are there. So that has belonged to that. Now, I would like to say something else with regard to the INEC chairman.
Quickly.
Yes, and all he has said. I think I would like to commend them for the work that they've been doing, especially since the postponement, and for the updates that they've been giving Nigerians. It's good to know that 98% of the smart card readers have been reconfigured. They said the remaining will be reconfigured by this morning, and it's good to know that other logistical problems are also being solved. I'm sure Nigerians will look forward to a free and fair election on Saturday.
That's
Based
right.
on logistics.
Based on logistics. Now, it's important to know that if you'd like to get detailed reports of INEC's readiness, you can get that story in the New Telegraph. Moving on to our second story here. Customs detained 4 officers over killing of man in viral video. We also talked about this video on Monday. We spoke about this again, got a lot of reaction, and the Nigerian Customs Service have come out to say that they are detained 4 of its men in connection with the accidental discharge incident on Sunday. Right, Deveo, you're taking this one.
Yes, apparently there were actually 2 cases that were actually captured, but the one here that had received the height of attention from the leadership of the customs was the one that took place around the Shagamu exchange. That's whereby one Destiny, that was a customs officer, shot what's his name, Godwin Onoja, and initially they had claimed it was accidental, but the co-controller of customs has waded into the matter, and he's asked the high-powered delegation to investigate, and that those who had fallen short on the wrong side will be dealt with accordingly. Now, usually, at the moment, the culprit himself is actually being treated, and once he's able to answer, he will face the panel. Whilst the customs is in touch with the family of the victim, and unfortunately, the customs actually knew this person. He's described as a friend of the customs. Now, the lessons here to quickly learn. One, we want to commend the quick speed at which the headship of customs came into this matter, because most times many Nigerians consider jungle justice because they feel that most of our institutions do not respond quickly.
Yeah, justice might not be
so I'd like to commend them for that. Now, the outcome of this trial will determine or make or mar whether there's a lasting positive impression of the customs and how they handle. Secondly, I'd like to also note the use of mobile media in terms of social media, as well as mobile technology in capturing some of the ills and defaults that we suffer, that take place within our daily living activities. And we're encouraging as many Nigerians to go to the elections with their mobile phones to be able to capture what's happening.
But you're not allowed to take your mobile
INEC
phones,
has said the way they have structured it, the phones will not be allowed at the voting booth. But around the scenario, as many people that can capture, eyewitnesses that can capture what is going on should. We must defend this election to the highest level of integrity as possible, even though we know that social media needs to be moderated and we need to be careful in filtering news to ensure that it's not fake. And then lastly, just like in the first story, there is a discipline required in rendering security in terms of where we have armed forces, and where there are many of Nigerians' security forces that are armed. They're talking about the civil defense, the police, the military, and even private security. And this is most important, so that those who are in charge or those who have the responsibility to carry such arms do not take off with bad judgment in making their judgments when they're carrying out their duties.
All right, thank you so much, Deveo. We'll go to your comments right now on WhatsApp.
Tony Aquara sent in this one on WhatsApp, says, "Good morning, Curie. I congratulate INEC for standing with the law rather than towing the line of the president on how to deal with the alleged ballot box snatchers." And thank you, Tony. Bengus says, "The whole apprehension of PDP and the supporters of the president's statements is totally uncalled for. Anyone who is not planning to disrupt elections need to be afraid of nothing. If you did not think about the rule of law before snatching ballot boxes, then to talk about the rule of law when you're being severely dealt with, when have we ever been scammed enough in this country with this kind of rule of law that we operate?" Bengus, thank you for your message.
Thank you.
Let's keep moving.
All right, we'll go on to our next story. This one, we mentioned this yesterday, talking about 1 year after the Sharibu was abducted by Boko Haram terrorists, along with over 100 Dachi girls in Borno State. And just a year after, her family members have come out with a statement lamenting the federal government's silence. Don't forget, they also had a press conference on the 10th of February last year. What's your take on this, Gbolahan?
Well, we've been talking about this last week, just as the family of Leah Sharibu actually came in the media as well to clamoring for the release of their daughter. So, of course, just as you mentioned, I mean, it's been a year now. It was a year yesterday that she's been that she was abducted anyway in Dapchi, and where she was abducted with 100 girls.
Yeah, a little over 100
Yeah, a
girls.
little over 100 girls, and a lot of them have been released, with the exception to Leah herself as well. And the reason for not releasing her, of course, is because she refused to renounce her Christian faith then. So the family are back once more as well to saying that they haven't actually heard anything from the government so far, even though the government had promised in October to intensify efforts in release and to ensure that she's released. But they're saying that they are not getting any information as to what the government is doing so far, what efforts are being made so far. And I remember last week as well when we talked about this as well too. One of the commentators that talked about this as well too said we haven't actually made enough news about this. We haven't actually made enough effort in making sure that this remains the front burner.
Do you think people are a bit disillusioned following, the noise that was made with the Bring Back Our Girls campaign? We know that not all the girls have been released yet, and the number of, in quotes, attacks that they had, those who went to Unity Fountain to protest. Do you think that might be one of the reasons why people are not clamoring as much? Because if you haven't done one, why are we moving on to the next?
Well, every life should matter anyway.
That's
Every Nigerian life does count as well. So irrespective of whether we have actually made success at getting the Bring Back Our Girls campaign, it's important as well to not forget Leah Sharibu as well and to continuously ensure that we put her at the center of our mind as well too. I mean, it's very important for our family, for her family as well too anyway. So we have to take this matter, and for Nigerians, and we have to take this matter very seriously. But the one thing I would like to comment about is that what exactly is the government doing, and how are they carrying the families along as well too as to what they're doing? Because the accusation here is that the government isn't even making any conversations or communications with the family members. I mean, for empathy purpose anyway, it's important that you carry the families along anyway, and not just leave them to their faith.
Very well said. Thank you so much. Election season, a lot of campaigning has been done. Perhaps this is one hot topic that we should hold our leaders to account to. Right, our story here: federal government protests inhuman treatment of Nigerians as Ghana deports 723 Nigerians. Now, the High Commissioner, Nigerian High Commissioner to Ghana, Michael Abikoye, has protested not just the deportation, but the inhuman treatment in the process of being deported. The story highlights some injuries that have been sustained by Nigerians and the comments and response by the Ghana representative. Deveo, what do you have to say about this?
Yes, a complete squaring off between the High Commission and our brothers in Accra. Now, this is a story that's gone on and on, because we've been hearing all the while what's been going on with the treatment of Nigerians in Ghana. Now, in this case, they mentioned that just within the last year, about 723 on account of illegal stays, cyber crimes, that's 419, and then prostitution. Now, the Nigerian High Commission was protesting that even though they agree that nobody should commit cyber crimes and prostitution, they were protesting against deportation or repatriation on account of illegal stay. Now, this brings the question, and they showed images and pictures of how Nigerians were being badly treated. On the Ghanaian side, the GIS, that's the immigration agency, yes, now also raised the issue of how Nigerians, not only were they in some cases where they deported them from, not only was it about prostitution and 419, but there was unruly behavior where Nigerians were fighting, and they showed videos. Yes, they showed footage of that. Now, you see, this brings to question the issue of, it's so much less about the legalities involved here and more about the bilateral and the diplomatic state of our union because we are brothers. We can't take this back. The ECOWAS treaty goes back as far as the 1940s, where there was a treaty between Nigerians and the whole of West Africa, especially the Anglophone countries, of how they would work together. Now, at some point, maybe due to government's inability and irresponsibility, we have lost the values that we once had. Now, this government particularly has not had a strong foreign policy. And foreign policy is one of the key benefits that any nation has in keeping things going economically, social-wise, and also security-wise. So I think the government, with the little time they have left, if they can, and also the incoming government, we need to hold our leaders accountable and confirm what are our foreign policies. We should be able to go to Ghana, and even if you overstay, have no issues. Because
I have a question though. I mean, foreign policies, do they negate immigration laws that exist in a country that is?
They don't. But in terms of interpretation, the law has been tweaked. Because I remember I attended a forum with the Lagos Chamber of Commerce, whereby it was stated that in the original treaty between Nigeria and West African countries, we are allowed. There is no hindrance to passage of persons and property, as long as you're an ECOWAS.
Does it speak to stay, overstaying your welcome?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That there is no hindrance to it. It goes way beyond the visa entry. There is no hindrance to passage of persons and property. Likewise, Ghanaians can come into Nigeria without restrictions. They can stay in Nigeria without restrictions. You can't pick up. No. You can't pick up a Ghanaian and ask them where are your papers for a stay, because he has those rights under the treaty as an ECOWAS citizen.
For a certain length of time.
Slicky
not indefinite.
Slicky08 on Twitter here says Ghana deports Nigerians. So what do you expect when you do not value or treat your citizens well? They should. Why should other countries bother? That's his question there. On WhatsApp, we have this one here from. Oh, please add your names to your messages so we can take them. And we have Shegun sending in this message. It says there was media and national outrage, and rightfully so, where the customs officer killed an innocent Nigerian at a checkpoint. But just a passing comment for when 4 NDLEA officers were killed at another checkpoint by criminals. Shegun is making this point known. Mikoko sent in this one as well. He says it's high time we Nigerians learn to stay home and develop our country. Young Nigerian youth in Ghana are there for illegal businesses, he says. Not all of them, I would say. And most of the Nigerians in Ghana, he said, are illegal immigrants. Disagree to that. Sharon says, to be honest, Nigeria is done for. Imagine being deported from Ghana. Ghana, it says. Let's move on to our next story. Keep your messages coming into WhatsApp 080944409881. From Guardian newspaper, Deveo, Budget, that's Budge IT, the civic data-driven organization, Budget Nigeria, they've asked INEC, the Independent National Electoral Commission, to publish data of PVC's collection nationwide. Looking towards February 23rd, the rescheduled date for the presidential polls, 3 days to go. Deveo, we have 84 million registered voters, over 119,000 polling units, and 91 registered political parties, yet no clear data on PVC's collected so far.
Well, I'm happy the paper published it, that it's coming from budget. However, this was an issue that has been stressed by the international observers, which is an issue because on many accounts now we're hearing how international observers are the reasons why some certain actions are being taken. And my question there is that, are we obtuse to integrity? Do we have issues with doing the right thing in this country? Well, INEC before, that was in 2015, they did publish the list of PVCs that were collected, because beyond the list of those that were registered, it's the amount that collected that you begin to count from. And the count doesn't even end there. There will also be the voter turnout at the end of the day, and beyond the voter turnout, you now have the valid vote. So we beg INEC, actually, at this time, to do the right thing. They know what to do. It's been done before. Do it again, so that it will not be left to speculation or given an opportunity to rig.
Thank you very much, Deveo. The analysis of Ria Sharibu is spot on. What has the government done on her account? There's a message we got from the number ending 2249. Please add your names to your messages so we can read them as they come. Wale sent in this one as well.
Our public institutions have a way of letting the citizens down and always take us for a fool. Anyone that has an idea of gun handling will hear the cocking of the rifle, which is deliberate. Whether the guy is a friend of custom or not is not the issue. A life was lost and somebody should be held responsible in a sane crime. Apart from that, the friend is believed to be the conduit for keeping money extorted from people. Sad indeed. Life is meaningless in our time and a good example of a failed state. No wonder we get nothing right. See how press release explain his theory, Wally.
Obama Chidoze says, can we ask those that are saying they do not see anything wrong with the president's statements about the ballot snatching? The guy that was killed by customs last week, what crime did he commit? Some of us, including me, are scared to go out and vote. While both are not related, we see your points as to the fear of personnel that handle weapons. We see that. Now, Big T sent in this message on WhatsApp as well. It says, poor treatment of core members and ad hoc staff at Ikotu, Igondu local government area. INEC staff did not provide materials or security for NYSC or ad hoc staff. They even, he made allegations of the fraud, fraudulent activities that are happening in those areas. We will verify that fact as we go along. Moving on now to Punch. I'll come to you, Gbolahan, for the analysis to this story. Nigeria's population growing faster than economy. It's a report from FSDH. They said, Nigeria, we know, is Africa's biggest oil exporter according to World Bank records, and 184 million Nigerians, and the population is rising with a tally, some say it's 200 million. But our economy is on shaky grounds and very unpredictable around this region, around this period of elections. What are your thoughts on this? We've been talking about economy versus population for a while back.
Well, absolutely. I think even last week, Monday, we were also talking about just this Monday, we were also talking about the economy and the investors coming to invest in the country.
Market sentiment.
Market sentiment and what have you. Anyway, this is not news. Anyway, this is something that we've always talked about as well too, that when we look at our economy right now, at the moment, according to the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, our GDP figures for 2018 was at 1.93%, and when you look at our population growth anyway annually, it's predicted that we're growing at about 3% annually or so, and it's also projected that in a couple of years down the line as well, a few years down the line, that our population will be about the third largest population in the world, about 250 million or so. We will be also in a few years down the line or so. So right now at the moment, what this report is actually saying is that the correlation between the population growth and your GDP growth isn't actually matching up. If you want to create more jobs, you need to be growing at 6% at least. And we were growing at 6% in about 2014 and before 2015 anyway. We were growing at much faster pace before we ended up in a recession or so, and our growth has been at about 2% so far or so. So when we're talking about growing, of course, we know the implication of GDP figures. When you grow, of course, that means more jobs are being created. You're alleviating a lot more people out of poverty as well too. So we're not talking about unemployment figures, which is currently at 21 million who are currently unemployed. So how do we do this? Of course, the best way to do this anyway, when we're talking about growing, of course, is government needs to do a lot more with policies. We need to look at policies that will stimulate growth. We need to look at sectors in our economy that are really growing very fast.
Non-oil sectors.
Non-oil sectors, absolutely, of course, because when this government came into power anyway, we were talking about diversifying away from oil and developing other sectors. And when we look at our GDP figures, the very recent one, there were a lot of growth in the ICT sector, in manufacturing, transportation, agriculture, mining and quarries sectors as well. These are areas that we're growing. So the government needs to do more in looking at formulating policies that would actually help in stimulating those growth so that we grow beyond the 2% that we're currently growing at, and we're looking at 6-7%.
But we know in analyzing this and talking about this in the past few days, there's been a very clear challenge, especially coming from the angle of the private companies, establishments who are very instrumental in changing for the positive, this trend, and seeing that government regulations or policies do not favor them and the business activities here.
Exactly. So it still boils down to the policies and creating the environment. If the environment is right, you will get investors coming in to invest in the country. If the banks are lending money to the real sector rather than actually taking money into treasury bills and buying government bonds, then we will see a lot more growth. And that's what this article speaks to. We just need to do more in formulating more policies to stimulate growth in our economy.
But treasury bills are very important as well, federal funds.
Well, they're important for the bankers, not for the common man.
Yes, I mean equitable distribution really. But let's move on to this next story from Punch newspaper. ASU chair demands 200 million naira from AAU for sexual harassment allegation. So we recall that the Ambrose Ali University lecturer, he was suspended through a news bulletin publication on February 13, 2019, over alleged gross misconduct bordering on sexual harassment and threats of sex for marks. While that raised an uproar at the time, Monday Bafe, he's of the Department of Philosophy in the university. He's instituted a suit against the university, saying they have defamed his character and the allegations are false. Adedunmade, your thoughts on this?
Yes, my thoughts are quite a few, but first of all, what came to my mind readily was that the ASU chairman has said that he's being victimized by the VC of AAU.
ASU chairman of the chapter.
Of the chapter, yes, sorry, so that people note that. Yes, of the chapter, of the AAU chapter particularly. Now, he has said this is because he has raised some questions as to what the VC did with about 5.5 billion naira that was received from the TED funds, and also an act that he said was wrong when the VC promoted his wife from a typist to a lecturer one without the requisite educational background, like having a master's or a PhD.
Yes.
Now, those allegations have been denied by a spokesperson of the university. They have said that the VC's wife actually got a PhD, and that she was, should I say, promoted by a former administration and not even the administration of the current VC. Now, they have also said that they have spent the money that they collected from the TED funds dutifully, and that they did not chop the money, basically. Yes. But what I find interesting is there are some questions that I would like to ask. For instance, before the chairman was suspended, was he even accorded fair hearing? Before the AAU chairman was the AAU ASU chairman was suspended, was he even accorded fair hearing? Was he allowed to face the panel? The report says that there was a panel by a former administration. I just believe that generally this matter is going to end up in court, and parties really have to come to court or come to the public with open hands, and they have to tell us, one, where is the money? How was the money spent? Was it spent dutifully? And also, were these charges against the AAU ASU chairman based on
sentiment?
Yes.
Thank you, Adedunmade. Let's move on. Let's take a few messages. Guru from VI sent in this message. The question is, please help a brother out here. Do I need visa to enter Ghana with my ECOWAS passport?
No, you don't.
No, you do not.
No, you don't. But up until
But to work, you do need visa.
yes, to work you need a visa. There's free movement here.
No, you don't need a visa to work. There's rights of establishment, but you need a passport to indicate that you are an ECOWAS citizen. So
naturally.
So you either have your Nigerian passport or your ECOWAS passport.
All right, so I'll read this from the Freedom Movement Agreement. ECOWAS has implemented measures so to temporarily reside in a member state for up to 90 days.
Yes. It's a protocol that's been disputed because
it's being disputed, but that's what it's about.
It runs contrary to the original document that was signed in the 1970s.
Guys, let's quickly move on to this next story, please, so we can touch on all the stories. Daily Times has this report. EFCC kicks against judgment on Maina, vows to appeal. Gbolahan, your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, this brings back the question as well to whether there's truly justice in this country at the moment. I mean, the reason why I said so is that when you look at this court judgment by the Federal High Court, we're talking about a man who has been fingered or who has questions to answer to with the 5 billion naira pension scam that occurred several years ago or so. And
so a bit of a background, sorry
yes.
to cut you short there. Maina was appointed in 2010 by the past administration
yes.
to sanitize corruption reading pension office. 3 years later, he was alleged to have misappropriated pensions office, the funds
yes.
allotted to that office to the tune of billions, and promoted from level 14 to 16. And then other allegations that, trailed.
Yeah, it was actually, after the allegation, and he went missing for a while. He now returned back as well, only to be found out that he was actually working in a government service, and he had been promoted then. So, and this happened under this current administration anyway. Well, when we look at the Federal High Court judgment, and what the Federal High Court judgment actually did state is that he's been granted an order of perpetual injunction from restraining the EFCC from actually declaring Maina wanted. I mean, I'm a little bit confused there why we would have a perpetual injunction from declaring him wanted or so. It sounds very, very funny to me. But then when we now look at the story anyway, so that set aside, so now at the moment, the EFCC is actually saying that they're going to appeal the court judgment because, of course, this is a Federal High Court judgment also. And I mean, this is a man that a lot of people have been saying that he's been protected by people in higher office at the moment, because of course when he returned back also, there were a lot of questions why he's not been prosecuted so far for all these crimes that have been leveled against him. And he came out and released a video as well to saying that, look, he's not afraid to be prosecuted, but there are also other people that are also involved in all these allegations,
Yes.
and he's going to be naming names as well. So why do we still have this going on? Why?
Well,
Yes.
could it be possible that because the EFCC could not provide enough evidence to push their case forward to a logical conclusion according to them, that leading to this kind of judgment that we're seeing right now?
Well, but that shouldn't be grounds for declaring a perpetual judgment from declaring him wanted. That means that the EFCC can never declare him wanted.
All right, moving on. Thank you very much, Gbolahan, for that analysis. Unfortunately, we cannot go through the last story, which speaks to Miriam Awaisu being released hours after arrest, according to the Guardian newspaper. We encourage you to go through the details of that. Now, Steve Obiako sent a message on WhatsApp, said the reactions that trail PMB statement is not about whether people want to snatch boxes or not, nor is it about PMB's constant disregard for laws. Both parties are desperate, they have thugs in both parties, and no matter how poorly put together our laws are, they should be respected, much so by the number one citizen himself. Special thanks to every one of you and to our analysts for coming in this morning. Gbolahan, Mr. G Quest, Adedunmade at Adedunmade on Twitter, and of course Deveo Okorie at Deveo Okorie. Coming up next in 14 minutes, we talk sports inside of the locker room. Good morning.
The stories.
Thank you.